We need to produce. We need the world, particularly British Columbia and our province. We need to be more producers and less derivatives of the production system. And that's what we got to change. So underlying value needs to be created, and that's only created by production, either mined or grown. And then you're somewhere in the food chain to assist that. But no more lawyers, no more bureaucrats, please. No more investment bankers. We need the workers, trades, and engineers and builders.
You know, it's interesting. One of the spin-offs of the Trump trade tariff dispute is people have started to get in touch with, we want to become more self-sufficient. We want a stronger economy. We don't want it totally dependent on the US, all of those things. Well, when you look at Canada's advantages, I don't think you go further than resources, whether it's oil and gas, minerals, etc. In fact, that's what the Prime Minister has said. But is it as easily said as done? I mean, Jeff Stibbard is the founder and chief executive or executive chairman of JDS Mining Energy. But my goodness, Jeff has this long list of accolades I'm not going to go into because he's been over 40 years in the mining business, starting from, mining sites in northern Canada, throughout BC, starting, from being a welder all the way up, of course, to the executive suite now. And they have projects throughout the world. That's why I think he's the person I wanted to get to with so many issues on the mining plate right now. Jeff, thanks for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. Good to be on.
I want to start with just something straightforward here because, of course, it's been the topic du jour over the last couple of weeks was the Kawichin tribe's decision that put in question private property, fee simple. I want to just know about the impact if you're thinking about doing a project. You guys do projects throughout the world. And to me, it's just that creates another set of circumstances that create uncertainty around the world and for investors, I mean. Is that a good take, or what is your impression of it?
Exactly, Mike. And again, with all due respect to the legal process and everything else, getting into that, but it is a shot heard around the mining world. It gets around fast, and as Canadians, we obviously are very good at promoting our skill set, both internally here in Canada and around the world. So we move fast, and this obviously doesn't make it good to stick around when you have this kind of uncertainty, particularly when there's already, it takes you 15 years to permit a mine in British Columbia, and adding this on top of it. And, even though that it's sort of been known that these kind of things happen in BC currently, as you know, in the Fraser Institute study, we're sitting around 32 in the worldwide rankings of where to do business in the mining business. And this is not going to make us go up in stature. It's going to definitely displace us into other regions. So the good news is, though, is our neighbors next door in Alberta is still a good place to work. So there's still quasi-local opportunities for us, but no, not good at all. And something that we need to put our heads together and fix this kind of problem. It can't keep propagating.
Well, again, so much political commentary came out of that decision, of course, and people's concern about their own property and can this go, throughout the province and even in Canada. I mean, there's lots around that, but I think it was completely underappreciated that there was a guaranteed impact, and the impact would be that people would feel uncertain as major investors there. And again, I'll come back to Prime Minister Carney. I'll quote him. He says, Canada's critical minerals are the backbone of a strong, sustainable economy, and we must act swiftly to unlock their potential through streamlined approvals and strategic infrastructure investments. And I'm saying I haven't seen anything yet. I hope I do, but there was another area that I wanted, again, you're unique in the fact that you worked up in the Arctic. And of course, now we see that's become a hot topic. Whether it's geopolitically, but China, rare earth minerals, critical minerals, rather, all of that's there. So give me a quick take. I mean, it seems to me we haven't done that much in that area in decades.
Sure. And if I could, just let me back up one point on the First Nations file. There was an announcement today, I think, or yesterday, about the Record Ridge project over in Roslyn, BC, and the Soyuz Indian Band, Clarence Louie, chief, obviously came out in support of that. He's been supportive of it for quite a few years. And of course, they just declared that they're going to push forward on that. And the environmental review process is not required. And of course, there's all sorts of pushback from other people now, the NGOs that are saying, well, yeah, we need that. And, but the mining industry, the proponent and Clarence Louie and the First Nations in the area were very well versed on what the impacts were, and they've kept it under the limits to make sure that it sort of fit all the legal requirements. And obviously, they still have to require the standards of permits of British Columbia and Canada. So everything was legally done right. Yet still, it's not enough. So those are the kind of things that are our attitude or sort of ethos of the country. We need to kind of get back to in order to make it so that it's not a 15-year timeline, whether it's First Nations issues, environmental issues, NGO issues. These things need to happen. These, as you said, these strategic metals. If we're going to be good at doing them, we got to get it down. And Prime Minister Carney committed to trying to get it down to 5 years. That's what his goal was. 5 years is. Well, we're 15 now. We got a long way to go, and we can't take small projects like Record Ridge out there in Rossland and make them turn into 5 and 10 and 15-year projects, which they are. So.
And I would think the expense is also one thing. I mean, I'm very familiar with, whether it's Enbridge or the Northern Gateway Pipeline, you go through a process, you spend $500 million, and then you don't get it through. Or Kinder Morgan just backed away after spending a ton of money. Energy East, a ton of money. We have other mining situations, oil and gas situations, is the same thing. To me, it would seem that the government's got a long way to go to sort of overcome the past in that way and create a level of trust with people who make those kinds of investment decisions.
You're absolutely right. And again, it's not an emotional thing that we're pushing back and saying we got to get it from 15 to 5. It is economics, and it's hugely expensive. And it's a barrier to entry for a lot of people. Even the explorers that start out when they don't have much of an impact, when they're just trying to determine the project, and it's more exploration and technical funding, that's going to dry up because people just aren't even going to enter that arena. So it's the emotional, but it's financial, and it's a barrier to even getting started. And remember, 1 in 100 projects get to be a mine, for example. So all that energy is going to find that 1 in 100. It'll just evaporate because people just move on and spend their exploration dollars, their technical dollars, which means in a lot of cases, which people don't understand, Vancouver, the hub cities, will suffer. Remember, Vancouver generates about $1.2 billion economically supporting mine development, and that's primarily in the engineering, the technical folks, environmental studies, lawyers. So those guys, when they maybe start to feel a pinch that their industry that they've generated off of studies and permits and things, even that's going to dry up. It'll come around, and that's what people got to understand. Out of the $4 billion of services in British Columbia to the mining business from other communities, Vancouver is one of the biggest benefactors. And that's where it needs to start to change. And people realize that you can't do it because we're just not even going to get started. So there won't be a need for consultants or, lobbyists or lawyers. So that needs to come home to roost. And
it seems like action has to be taken, though. I mean, I've made many investments in my life, and after the track record, I'd need some concrete steps to go forward. As I say, because it seems that we don't appreciate that there's other places to put the money. Your company does work throughout the world. They consult, or they hire you guys to do all sorts of things, put a mine in process or review the operations, whatever, engineering, you do the whole list, but you do it globally. And again, there seems to be a lack of appreciation that we're in a competition for capital. As you alluded to earlier, Fraser Institute said we are about the 30, we're running around saying we're number 32. That doesn't get it done. Sorry, I'm going on and on, but look at just 2 weeks ago, with the Ring of Fire, we had a particular First Nations group said no mining, no matter what, in the Ring of Fire. Well, my goodness, so I have a lot of work to do to convince me that this is going to go forward.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And when people make those ultimate declarations, it shows sort of a lack of our system. We're not educating people enough to understand. Nobody can live one day in Canada without copper. It's got to come from somewhere. Canadians, British Columbians in particular, there's no better place on the planet to produce that. So if you don't like it, whether it's environmental impact, you're just pushing that problem somewhere else, and we all know that. And we can't live without these things. We've got to be part of the solution. And I got an interesting stat. In British Columbia, Canada, I think we're one of the lowest users of energy to produce our minerals. We're actually reduced it over the last 10 years by 21%. These are phenomenal things because we embrace technology, not as much as we should, in terms of productivity, which also enhances that as well. But so our education's failing us, or at the lowest level. Obviously, the Mining Association of British Columbia tries to do a good job and helps get programs in schools. But that elementary school level, the high school level, and particularly university level, we're not educating people to understand the need that we have for energy and materials, and the fact that we can do it right here, and the fact that we need to do it better and better and better, and that's technology and productivity. So when you say you don't want it, well, where are you getting it from, and what impact are you pushing that problem around? And we all know that we could supply a lot more gas from our country to foreign places and reduce greenhouse gases by 6% versus our 1.6% we produce. So we've got a real problem with understanding economics impacts, but most of it's again emotionally driven, politically emotionally driven, not factually driven. So we got to get that part sorted out, and even a national sort of declaration that this is the truth. And then we got to roll back some of these heady rules like Bill C-69, C-48, 15, et cetera, and just get realistic. We need to produce. We need the world, particularly British Columbia and our province, we need to be more producers and less derivatives of the production system. And that's what we got to change. So underlying value needs to be created, and that's only created by production, either mined or grown. And then you're somewhere in the food chain to assist that. But no more lawyers, no more bureaucrats, please. No more investment bankers. We need the workers, trades, and engineers and builders.
Well, as I said, when it comes to resources, Prime Minister Carney has said some things that are positive, but I haven't seen any actions to follow up. And it's really interesting because maybe that's what one of the opportunities of the Trump tariff war have been, is that we said we want to be more self-sufficient, or not reliant on the U.S., et cetera. Well, where is there a bigger opportunity than resources? As you say, demand, whether we're talking copper, nickel, which we could get up north. There's a variety. I can't do it justice in just a moment, but it just seems there's got to be a further shift, as you're saying, to looking at the opportunities. These aren't problems. These are incredible opportunities. And let me come back to the Arctic with that. Because again, geopolitically, we're hearing a lot about it, whether we're talking Russia, China, the US, but you've been up there and worked. And again, it seems to me we got a huge infrastructure challenge if we are going to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lived, worked in there. And, I was very, very lucky as a young man, again, growing up in West Vancouver, 18-year-old. And we talked earlier that it was expensive back there in the 80s for real estate, just like expensive now. What do you do about it? Move. You want to actually own a house in West Vancouver or Vancouver? Move and go make some money. And the best place to make it is in the Arctic. You can work on limited hours, make good pay, own a house up there, get some capital, and move back if you really wanted to. I particularly didn't want to move back, so I haven't. But the opportunity is endless. Remember, more than 50% of our landmass or Canada is above the 60th parallel. The geographic center of Canada is Baker Lake, Nunavut, and I bet you less than 1% of the population has been to that area. So people don't understand the magnitude of the opportunity. And as a result, we've had a lack of infrastructure demand up there. And we also have missed this fact that there is these great opportunities that need to be enabled, much like British Columbia, with infrastructure, roads, ports, rail, dams, power, cheap power. Well, those things are missing in the Arctic, or so let's call it north of 60, including the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. They're absent, absolutely. So other than the ice road projects, which work for things like gold mines and diamond mines, because you can take most of your product out in a coffee can every day. But if you're producing copper, lead, zinc, or any other bulk material, you need access to ports to get it offshore. That is because we don't have any processing facilities in Canada, so to speak. We have one copper smelter and we have one lead zinc smelter and a couple aluminum smelters, but we've given up that secondary process. So everything has to by default go somewhere else. Just like the United States, they're similarly hampered with that. It's got to get to the ocean. So the ice road idea doesn't work bringing materials from, say, the 66th or 70th latitude down through to Port of Vancouver, Canada's largest port. So it has to go north. It has to go into ports into the north, which means Northwest Passage, seasonal shipping. We need ports, we need roads, we need railways to access these untapped large resources of copper, silver, lead, zinc, etc., including rare earths. Lots of rare earths up there. Remember, rare earths aren't so rare. There's lots of them.
Yes.
They're just not necessarily economic to get out at this point in time. So that's not a bad thing. We don't have to run around trying to find rare earths, because if we can buy them cheaper, we don't need them. But let's focus on stuff that works. Iron ore, which we have a large iron ore project out in the east coast on Baffin Island. And they're having troubles to expand that iron ore mine, which they need to get their bulk direct ship iron ore off the coast. Because of permits and people saying, well, there's all these issues out there. Well, this mine is the largest employer of Nunavut people, and it has a 20, 30, 40-year mine life. We need to be doing all we can to move that opportunity forward and help these folks get product to market. So Carney, and I should say even Pierre Poilievre, so they all talked about doing stuff in the Arctic, and I actually helped Pierre. I gave him a plan of where the resources are and what infrastructure needs to be put in place in the Northwest Passage opportunities. But again, we talk lots, and as you said, no action. Action is eloquence. We have a lack of eloquence in this country. And I'm just talking the mainland of the North. There is the Arctic archipelago, which we used to have a big mine up there. Canada had a mine which was one of the northernmost mines, and that was the Polaris mine from Kawichin. We did a great job building it remotely, fabricating it, floating it up, and then installing it, mining for more than 20 years, lead, zinc, and that material went to the open market. The cost of production up there was low because we were able to get supplies straight by marine shipping straight to the mine. So you had world pricing for energy and materials and supplies. Obviously a tough place to go to work, but it produced, and really nobody even knew about it. And when it's all said and done, it was over. They just took that barge of plants, they moved it and cleaned it, and you can't even notice it today. So those are the kind of things that Canadians need to understand, and they need to be advocates. They need to be rallying to their local politicians and national politicians that, why aren't we doing these things? Well, we got things like moratoriums on oil and gas in the north. So there's 5-year moratoriums that was put on with Trudeau Jr. in 2015 from all oil and gas in the Arctic. Well, and it was renewed again in 2020, and it comes up right now this year, and it's most likely going to get put on again. We used to drill and produce oil and gas in the Arctic. We have prolific energy supplies in the Stibbard Islands, latitude 75 to 77 degrees north. Shallow water gas wells. We drilled over 1,630 wells, and of which 600 plus of them were producers and capped. So energy self-sufficient in that area, or compressed and shipped offshore in terms of gas. We could light it up, and now we can build proper communities. I compare Canada's north to Norway, which, a small place, small country that was at the bottom of the 30 countries of the OECD. It's now the number one. They got a town called Hammerfest, which is north of the 77th parallel. So much like I was talking about the Polaris mine in the archipelago, which is non-existent. So let's use Resolute. Resolute is the one community that's close to it that actually exists, and it's about 1,000 folks up there. The Norwegians, they took a little village called Hammerfest from 3,000 people to 30,000 people in over just under 30 years. So rule of threes here. And they embraced natural gas compression and offshore drilling and compression and exporting. They now have a town of north of 30,000 people that has universities, college, trade schools, hospitals, international airport, and they embrace, I call it the suck. They live in the north. It's cold. Some people might think it's bad. So they embraced it because they can't move themselves. That's what they got in the country. We don't recognize that our country is not Vancouver, Toronto, and the lower 500 kilometers. It's north of 60. And that's where the opportunity is. And people have to talk about that. But in order to make that opportunity, they have to make Canadian conscious decisions that we're going to do something with it. And if we don't use it, we lose it. We see other people transiting our zones, and we have no ability to do anything about it, or to to service them and make some money off it. So we got to get our heads together. We got to take a page out of Norway's book and look how they do it. Now, granted, their coastal climate is a little bit more milder than say our inter-archipelago, but it's something that we could do as well, and we could generate huge wealth. We can make communities that people would want to live in. Imagine a town in Northwest Territories, Nunavut, that's got 30,000, that's got fast internet, it's got gyms, hospitals, and hotels. That's where people want to live. They don't want to live in these temporary housing. I call it temporary, but it is permanent for a lot of people up there, built on pilings and painted purple and looking kind of chic and everything, but functionally hard to live in. I know that. I lived there. It's expensive and it's cold and it's not all that motivating in a lot of times of the year when it's dark 24/7. You need some serious thinking to go into plan that, to get the people. And that's created because of mineral wealth. There's a reason to be there. Energy wealth, the energy price is down. You can afford to live there and you can inspire young people. Remember, not everybody in the mining business or the resource business is a dirty miner like myself. They are educated people. More than 60% of the people in the mining business have a post-secondary degree. Only 26% of the people in the mining business actually touch the rock or the dirt or whatever. The rest are technical and managerial or financial and et cetera. And that's what you put in these communities, and it builds a community beyond the sustenance level kind of small town. It creates a real vibrant place. And that's all started by an economic engine called energy and minerals. And that's Canada. We can't ignore it. We're failing in technology. We're failing in getting young people to get into the business because they have been told that it's a stigma, that it's bad for people. We're destroying the environment. That's a myth. We need to undo it.
And huge opportunity. I mean, I always talk about this record youth unemployment. Where's your future? Well, your future, as I say, you carved it out, whatever it was, 40 years ago, or just over 40 years ago.
Camp job in the Arctic after I left West Vancouver. Yes.
But let's just finish with this, because it seems like the number one step we have to do is get past the political happy talk. I call it. That's not you. I call it happy talk. And isn't that nice? Were we serious about becoming less dependent on the U.S.? What is our greatest advantage? If I'm competing in the world economically, what's my greatest advantage? It's going to be resources. We have opportunities in the minerals, opportunities in energy. It seems to me that we need as you've just been alluding to, we need a psychological shift, an attitudinal shift here. If we are serious about that, and as I say, I think we're desperate for it, by the way, economically and, government revenue wise, et cetera, but we need an attitudinal shift.
You're absolutely right. Again, it's called leadership, really. That's what it really is. And we got to say what needs to be said and stop sort of going along to get along. And people, obviously the Trump factor kind of made people aware of some things. It affected our election, and I believe in a negative way. But I tell people, and even I talked to Pierre about this, is that we don't need to shake our fist at Trump. We need to kind of shake our fist at ourselves, and more importantly, actually get our hands from being palms up to palms down. Grab some stuff and let's get going. We have things that are legitimately, as people say, shovel ready to do, that we need to kind of mobilize in a big way. That's leadership. And I don't want to use Trump too much as an example, but good or bad, he says something, he does it. And that's what we need to start doing. We need to show that we have action in our words. There's iron in our words, and we don't go back on it. So that's mandatory, but we need that 1 or 2 or 10 projects. I know Premier Eden said he wants 10 mines in BC. In his time. Well, we got 3 sort of on the books here, but moving forward, we need him to stand up and be a leader. We need him to say, hey, in order to do this, we might have to kind of back off on some of these things that we've put an ultimatum in the map and says we're not doing. We need to look at them better and make it happen fast. Those need to be the agendas that are talked about in the media, as how do we make them happen, as opposed to, oh no, somebody else is trying to make money in this country and it's not the government. That's terrible. We need to get off that.
Great stuff, Jeff. And let me just say thank you so much for finding time. We need more voices like yours. JDS Energy and Mining, you got the global perspective from what your company does and your people do. And I think it's just so valuable for our listeners to hear it. Thank you for it.
Hey, well, thank you for doing it. I think you're just as much a part of it. In order for you for us to talk, it's you to make it happen. So keep doing what you're doing, keep your show going, and get it wider spread. How do we get it into the schools?
Couldn't agree more. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, man. Yep. Have a great weekend. Take care. Good talking to you.